Welcome to our session today. Today, my name is Rob Wu. I'm the CEO of CauseVox, and today I have a guest, a very special guest, and she'll introduce herself pretty soon. But I'm excited just to chat with this organization because they just finished a fundraising event and they raised a ton of money. So what that means is that there's a few things we can actually learn from Krista at Investing Kids. So Krista, why don't you start off? Who are you and what organization are you with?
So my name is Krista Mortensen, and I'm the development manager at Invest in Kids. We're a Denver-based nonprofit with the goal of improving the health and well-being of young children and families across the state. We do that through three kind of sub-programs we do everything from prenatal care with low-income moms to social emotional learning with pre-K and kindergarten students to intensive in-home family therapy for kiddos and their families that are struggling with kind of destabilization and that sort of thing. So a really wide spectrum of things, all with the goal of improving the health and well-being of Colorado's youngest citizens.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty amazing because I had a chance to really dive deeply into your website here that I'm sharing. And I think for folks who want to learn more about Invest in Kids, they can definitely go to iik.org, and then you'll have a ton of information, really great storytelling on this page. So it's worthwhile for any nonprofit to really check out this site here, iik.org, investinkids.org. There's a few different tips and inspirational points that you can take and bring back to your organization. So Krista, can you talk to me about your role as development manager? How long have you been in fundraising and what do you focus on when it comes to fundraising at your role?
Sure. So I actually just started with Invest in Kids last May, so we're coming up on about a year. Before that, I was with Wings Over the Rockies, which is the Air and Space Museum here in Denver. I was there for about 4 years. And before that, I worked at Metropolitan State University of Denver, where I also went to school. I got a degree in fundraising, so I've kind of been in this field from jump. It's always been my passion. I've always been super passionate about kiddos. So when the opportunity came to switch and move to Invest in Kids, it was kind of a no-brainer. And in my role as the development manager here, it's kind of 50-50 split between individual fundraising, so helping our executive director work with our major donors, helping our development director work on kind of larger scale campaigns, and then also running all of our fundraising events. So obviously the Jane-athon, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, is our biggest fundraising event of the year, but we also do smaller events. We have a lot of really great donors and board members that often open their homes to us, so we do a lot of house party style events. We do some restaurant tours, and we are actually in the process right now of planning our 25th anniversary gala, which will be next fall. So it's really interesting. No 2 days look the same, which is one of my favorite things about fundraising, but I feel really lucky to be able to focus more on events in this role than I have in the past.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a ton of different fundraising tools in your toolbox. And it sounds like also that there's a lot of different initiatives that focus on different audience as well. So I really love that. So Krista, I know that you have a degree in fundraising. So this is something that a lot of our nonprofit audience don't have. So I'm really curious. You have a lot of training when it comes to that, but also you have a ton of hands-on experience. So what is your number one fundraising tip or fundraising hack that you want to share with our nonprofits today?
Sure. So when it comes to peer-to-peer fundraising specifically, I'm all about incentives and prizes. So we had, for our most recent event, kind of benchmark prizes where if you hit your minimum fundraising goal, there were prizes, and then we had a couple of levels above and beyond that. We found that our audience really responded to that, especially because we were willing to spend a little bit of money on some of the prizes. And then we have a really great partner in Christie Sports who offered us some larger, really, really cool prizes that are very on brand because the Jane-athon is a ski event. So I think that's kind of our big number one thing, and we've seen a lot of really great response with that. The other thing that we discovered this year is that encouraging our participants to submit their donations for corporate matching was really powerful. So letting them double their donation pretty much instantly, because we told them if they could send us proof, a screen grab of the submission page, their receipt, what have you, then we would apply those matching funds towards their total right away. So we had people who went to their company and said, hey, I fundraised $1,000, will you match it? And their company said yes. So then immediately they've doubled their fundraising and they're that much closer to winning all the big prizes. So those are kind of my two big hacks.
I think I think those two are huge when it comes to peer-to-peer campaigns, incentives to really motivate the peer-to-peer fundraisers so they have another reason to participate. And then second is the matching donation. So it just makes it a lot easier for folks to do peer-to-peer fundraising. So why don't we dive into your peer-to-peer fundraising campaign? I'm going to share your Jane-athon real fast. So could you take us through when it comes to this Jane-athon? Here it is. When it comes to the Jane-athon page, this is powered by CauseVox, and then you were able to go create this. But I'd love to first really dive into what is Jane-athon and how did you come up with that concept? How did Invest in Kids come up with this concept that's been around for over 2 decades?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and something I've been talking about a lot lately because the Jane-athon just wrapped up. So the Jane-athon started 23 years ago when our board chair, Eric Hilty, and a bunch of his buddies went up to Mary Jane Mountain in Winter Park. And if you're from Colorado, you know that Mary Jane is kind of classic Colorado skiing. They went up and they said, we're going to ski all of the bump runs, all the mogul runs at Winter Park. And if we can accomplish this, we're going to have our friends pledge money for every run we do. There are 16 bump runs on the Mary Jane side of Winter Park, and they did it. And they raised, maybe $5,000. It wasn't very big, but they had a lot of fun doing it. And that was 23 years ago. So over the years, it's sort of evolved into this larger and larger and larger event. They started getting corporate sponsorships. Corporate sponsors started sending teams. They introduced prizes. And it's kind of just grown and grown until this 2-day event. The Friday portion of the event is our corporate day. So we had about 250 corporate participants come up with their companies and ski. And then the Saturday event is more friends and family. So just by nature, it's a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate, but still tons and tons of fun. Lots of people bring their kiddos. And it's just all around like a real true to Colorado event, perfectly on brand, because Invest in Kids is statewide. It was just sort of a natural connection for us to have our, a thon style event be a ski event. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the history of the Jane-athon. This was the first time I ran the Jane-athon, so I learned a lot about the history of it and kind of how it usually goes from our amazing team here who's been running it for so long. So definitely helpful to have all that historical knowledge walking into it.
Yeah, I'm curious because your Jane-athon is a 2-day event. And then you mentioned that for the first day, it's the corporate, corporations, corporate sponsors, and the second is just friends and family. So when it comes to your peer-to-peer fundraising, how much success do you see from the corporate side on the day 1 versus the day 2? Because those two are a little bit different audiences.
Totally. That's a really good question. So on the corporate side of things, just by nature of the way our sponsorships are set up, we have more participants. So we have 4 different sponsorship levels, and each sponsorship level comes with a certain number of free registrations. As part of our process, we charge a $35 registration fee just so our participants have some skin in the game, and they actually follow through on their fundraising commitments. But we waive that fee for our corporate participants if their company is sponsoring. So just sort of by nature of the way those sponsorships are set up, we have more participation, which obviously translates then into more fundraising on that side. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the fundraising is different in any way, the way people approach it, how much they raise. But we do see more revenue on Friday just because there are more people on the mountain with us.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because a lot of the peer-to-peer campaigns that are run, of the folks that I talked to at least, there hasn't been such a large focus on the corporate side, where it's more focused on, okay, I have my list of folks, I have my own audience, my own friends and family essentially, and then I want to actively do peer-to-peer fundraisers. Well, for over here, it's interesting because Invest in Kids has found a whole different pool of audience of folks that can be highly engaged. They're very invested into the fundraising campaign. And then you see a ton of fundraising success by adding that additional audience into the Jane-athon. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, totally. And those corporate sponsorships actually helped us build up a really solid base of fundraising before people even really started building out their pages. We had about $120,000 just in sponsorships alone this year. So it helped us kind of get ahead of the game and have some really measurable progress so that people, when they actually went to the page to set up their own personal pages, things were actually happening and it didn't feel like they were starting totally from zero. So can't recommend enough integrating your sponsors into the participation in your event, because then you have a built-in base of people who are going to raise money.
Yep, yeah, and we've seen a lot of success when it comes to peer-to-peers when you have this quiet phase in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
where you have either your board members, core group of supporters, and in your case, you have all these corporate sponsors really seeding the campaign and making it get to the next level before you launch publicly to other people. So I find it really interesting and very valuable as well. So
Totally.
I have it shared over here. This is your Jane-athon page that just ended. Let's talk about the structure of your peer-to-peer fundraising real fast, because I think for a lot of folks listening in about peer-to-peer fundraising, they may not fully understand like what are personal pages, what are team pages, what is the campaign page. So why don't we walk through real fast, kind of like the aspects of your peer-to-peer campaign site here.
Sure. So at the top, I have to shout out our logo. I love our graphic designer. This is a totally revamped logo. You can see in the video there on the corner, it's usually been a lot more angular, a little more old school looking. So we totally revamped the logo this year, and I think that it really added a good pop to the top of it. We put it on hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kinds of stuff. So just a shout out to our marketing team in making that really good for us. Instead of having just a static graphic at the top, we chose to put our 2021 wrap-up video up. And it's actually interesting because in 2021, obviously we were in the thick of COVID, but because the Jane-athon is a primarily outdoor event, we were actually able to host the event essentially with no interruption. At the end of every day, we have an après-ski awards ceremony kind of big party. And so we just did that part on Zoom. And so a lot of the audio in that video is from that Zoom presentation. But functionally, not a lot about the event changed. We had our participants pick up their passes and everything before they went up the mountain. We popped up a tent in one of the parking lots so people could come see us if they wanted to. But it was still really successful. And to that point, it was the most money we had ever raised. We blew that goal out of the water this year, but it was a really successful event in 2021. So just wanted to call that out and shout out our team from last year who did it. So you can see that our registration button has flipped to say that registration is closed because the event is over, but normally that button says register to participate, and we'll walk through kind of what it looks like to build out a personal page in a moment here.
So,
a lot of this verbiage, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so it sounds like as you're running Jane-athon peer-to-peer, you're able to go in and switch things out as things occur. So your
Totally.
insight is never static. So I think that's really valuable of an insight because as you're running things, you can always change things on the fly to reflect
Totally.
what phase your peer-to-peer campaign is in. So
Totally. And that was one of the things that we liked the most about CauseVox, actually, was the ease of access in that interface and the ease of changing things around. I mean, if you see a typo, if you want to add new things, it takes all of 5 minutes to make a change. So that was definitely a big plus in the pro column for us as we were deciding kind of who to go with this year. So as you go down, a lot of this verbiage is from previous campaigns. So we definitely didn't reinvent the wheel because a lot of the information is the same. You know, our mission hasn't changed, a description of the event hasn't changed. So we were able to pull a lot of that out of our previous platform before we ended that contract and transitioned to CauseVox. So you'll see there's just a general description of Invest in Kids. There's a description of the Jane-athon, some information about how to participate. Because we were using a new platform this year, we actually created a YouTube video for our participants on how to go through the registration process, because a lot of them had been using our previous platform for a few years and were feeling a little confused. So definitely was a big plus for us to be able to tell people, if you go to the site, there's a video that'll walk you through how to register. One of the other things that we really have been working on this year specifically is talking about the impact of gifts and being able to monetize that impact for people. So $175 is the minimum that we ask people to fundraise. So we translated that into, you know, what that really means in terms of our programming. So $175 gives one student the opportunity to participate in one of our programs for a full year. So that's a very tangible thing that we can tell people that then they can tell their donors, because ultimately what we're trying to do is fill their toolbox as much as possible with information that they can then share with their friends and family. So we did $175, $250, and $1,000. And we're actually looking at expanding those options next year so that people have even more information to share with their donors. So it's a pretty simple formula in terms of how people participate, but there's lots of bells and whistles involved. So like I said, we had lots of prizes and giveaways throughout the event that were really successful. The people who won were super excited. And again, big shout out to Krista Sports, who provided us like 10 pairs of skis and a bunch of helmets and goggles and gift cards. So If you can find a partner like that who will just, happily sponsor all of your prizes, it makes your life a lot easier. I don't think I have to tell all the fundraising professionals out there that hunting for prizes and silent auction items is one of the most tedious tasks in fundraising. So being able to kind of one-stop shop all of that with a company that's so on brand with the event was really helpful for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
And
I
then
really
obviously all of our... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I really like the aspect of where you gave reference points to your peer-to-peer fundraisers, 175, 250, 1,000. So it ties directly to the impact that they're having when you're doing the peer-to-peer campaign. I think a lot of times organizations, when they run peer-to-peer, they focus a little too much about the funds that need to be raised, because as a development person, you're wearing this hat with a singular goal of raising a certain amount. So that kind of gets bubbled to your peer-to-peer fundraisers. But what I recommend is taking a step back and becoming a coach, where you're not the quarterback anymore. You're the coach, and then you're trying to coach your peer-to-peer fundraisers on how they can be successful. So the two things I really love here are that, one, you're giving people a reference point of the impact that they can have, and then two, you actually have incentives in a toolkit that they can use so they can go out there and be well equipped to accomplish their fundraising goals.
Definitely, definitely. And that was what a lot of our email marketing was around too, was sending out emails with fundraising tips. And again, just really emphasizing those prizes and those competitions so that people felt, confident walking out and trying to raise the money. We also saw a lot of kind of competition within our sponsor companies. So if you scroll down, you can see we had about 27 sponsors this year. And a lot of them sent, 15, 20. I think that PNC sent like 25 people, A2 had like 15. So these big companies are sending lots of people. They're creating teams within their own company and then competing against each other. So really capitalizing on that kind of competition spirit between the companies was also really helpful for us, and frankly made our jobs a lot easier.
Yeah. So what is like your best advice for other peer-to-peer event organizers in securing like the perfect fit of a sponsor? It seems like Christie Sports was a really great fit because they offer incentives and prizes, and as a company, they receive a lot of awareness too, since this is going out to a lot of people. So just a win-win situation there. I'm curious, what is your advice when it comes to approaching a corporate sponsor for a peer-to-peer event?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really good question. So we spent a lot of time thinking about our different levels of sponsorship. So, you don't necessarily have to name them, but the naming conventions were very nice for us because they're the names of different levels of ski runs. But my biggest advice, honestly, is just make the ask and offer to customize it all in the same breath. So we kind of had our standard slate of sponsorship opportunities available to companies, but I would always tell them, if your budget's different, if your needs are different, let's have a conversation about it and let's customize this to what you need. And we saw a lot of really good success with that. So like our other level sponsors were like, our budget's not quite big enough, but we can give you, $500, $1,000. And then we would sort of tweak it a little bit so that they were getting what they needed out of it and we were still able to secure those sponsorship dollars. We also have a Jane-athon committee that's a subcommittee of our board, which was really helpful because they have connections in the community, in the business world. So really capitalizing on the natural network that exists just by nature of having a board of directors and by having committees was really helpful for us. And a lot of these sponsors have been sponsors for a really long time. So again, it made my job pretty easy going back to them and just introducing myself basically and telling them what the different levels were going to be this year. So definitely forming those relationships over time, and making sure that they understand that nothing is set in stone and that we can always do whatever works best.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is be flexible with your sponsorship package, and then being open to customizing what that package is really important. But also sounds like when it comes to sourcing corporate sponsors, you all did not go out there and just cold email companies. It was everything was more of a warm introduction, either through your board or somebody knew about the organization, so you can be able to have a meaningful conversation with somebody that has the authority to make a decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would also say, don't get too complicated. Don't get too in the weeds. A lot of corporate sponsors aren't going to care if they get 2 Facebook posts versus 4. What they care about is the exposure that they get for their company and what they can offer to their employees, which is why registration is always part of all of the sponsorship packages that we offer.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to consider as well. For larger companies, it's not in the nitty gritty like promotions aspect of it. It's
Mhm.
more the overall brand awareness as well as employee engagement that's really important for them.
Exactly, exactly.
I see here that we scroll down to your peer-to-peer site. So you have both fundraisers, which are your peer-to-peer participants, and then
Hmm.
you have teams, which kind of range from companies to different groups. Can you talk us through your structure here and how it's formulated?
Sure, sure. So every person who participates builds out their own individual fundraising page. And then from their dashboard on that page, they can join or create a team. And CauseVox makes this really, really easy. Walking through our other platform, it seemed a little bit complex. It seemed like you had to have one person who was sort of spearheading the whole thing. Whereas with CauseVox, it's very easy for anybody who's part of the team or the company to set things up. So the personal pages come pre-populated with text. So we went through and wrote all of this information out for people so that they didn't have to, write a big long 5-page essay about why they love Invest in Kids. And we saw a lot of people keep that, again, with those different tiers broken out to really showcase the impact. And so from there, they were able to, add their own pictures, write their own story. You can see that we had kind of a standard slate of pictures that we offered them, links to our social media channels. So I definitely recommend spending some time making sure that the default language on the individual pages is really solid so that your fundraisers don't feel like they have to do a ton of work to communicate your mission that you're already communicating so well. So from their dashboard, they can then join a team. And you'll see on here, we marked their team as full because we kept our teams to 6 people each. And that was to kind of just keep all the competitions fair, because if you have 30 people on one team and 4 people on another, obviously the bigger team's going to raise more money. So we kept it to 6 people each. And then they're able from there to set their own team goal. They can set their own personal goals. And you can see some people really blew it out. Some people didn't raise as much, but they still raised a lot of money for us. So gives them lots of flexibility and capability within their own page to kind of set their own pace and decide how intensely they want to participate personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that structure because you're able to build these little micro communities when it comes to your peer-to-peer campaign. I think a lot of times when it comes to peer-to-peer fundraising, it feels like you're not connected to a community or you have a small community and you can formulate this team page. So for folks who aren't able to create a page or for folks who identify with something already, then that allows them an ability to have a place. One of the things I want to highlight here, I did see some companies that have team pages,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Where is it?
Yeah. Royal Gold was a sponsor. KPMG was a great sponsor
Yeah.
for us. So yeah, we let companies, like I said, each company's sponsorship came with a certain number of registrations. And then within that number of registrations, we gave them the opportunity to break their teams up. And we even went so far as to say, if people just don't have time or they don't want to deal with it. If they send us all of their information, we actually went through and registered a lot of people on the back end of things and built their teams out for them. And so then we could just send them their links, made it super, super simple for them. It was a little more time intensive on our side, but it really, really paid off for some of those larger companies that just didn't have the capacity to go around to each individual person and ask them to register.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really valuable of just providing the additional assistance in the peer-to-peer, especially if it's for a target audience like the corporate sponsors, which that if you spend an hour of time, you'll get a huge return from that. So I think that's really valuable to understand. Um,
Totally.
when I was browsing your website too, I think one of the things that was interesting is that you do include the Jane-athon on your website here. So
Mm-hmm.
when someone clicks on it, there's a lot more information because a lot of times we see organizations just point people to the campaign site without more of this middle ground of kind of explaining what the campaign is. So talk us through kind of what's important on this page when you're thinking through kind of crafting the messaging here.
Absolutely. So again, we always want to lead with kind of what is it and what is it supporting. So that's what that first sentence is really accomplishing is this is what the Jane-athon is and this is why it matters. This is how it relates to Invest in Kids. Because we do see a lot of people who they say, my company is sponsoring. I don't really know much about Invest in Kids. that sort of thing. So really making sure that people understand the what and the why. Lots and lots of pictures. We love that. We hire a professional photographer every year. The countdown at the top of the page was new this year, and that was kind of fun. We actually have our dates for 2023, so soon that page will flip, and it'll start counting down, 350 some odd days until next year. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see that bottom picture is a photo from the first Jane-athon ever. So that's the original crew that skied all 16 bump runs. We just got that from our board chair this year, so that was kind of a fun throwback. We have a link to our sponsorship document that lists out all the different levels on there. And then new this year, we actually created an FAQ sheet for our participants. So that was really important to us too. And then obviously listing out all of our sponsors, making sure that they're getting lots and lots of love from us. So I think just making sure that it's not too overly complicated in the messaging, but that it has all the relevant information. That FAQ document was huge for us this year because we had so many people who had participated in 2021, so they didn't know what a quote-unquote normal Jane-athon looked like. So this document takes you through, where to park, what the timelines look like, letting people know you can get free rentals from Christie Sports, what tags to use on social media, what we're doing to mitigate COVID, that sort of thing. A run through of all of our different competitions. And so you can see we gave people tons and tons of different ways to win. Highly, highly recommend that. Our contact information, we were fielding calls kind of all day long. And then just a general kind of what is Invest in Kids, what is the Jane-athon, that sort of thing. Again, giving our fundraisers all of those tools so that they feel confident going to their peers and saying, hey, I'm doing this Jane-athon. Here's what Invest in Kids is about. Do you want to throw me, $15, $20, $25 to help support this larger goal?
Yeah, I really like this toolkit because not only does it provide a lot of information about the event, but it provides a lot of resources for your peer-to-peer fundraisers so that they can be equipped to go out there and solicit for funds. I mean, having a strong, compelling reason why. So I think this is really valuable here. And this is one of the things that we advocate for when it comes to creating these personal pages. So you can include a link to it in the welcome email that's sent out to your peer-to-peer registration, your peer-to-peer registrants, as well as we even have something on the peer-to-peer account side for someone sets up a page where you can link to a fundraising toolkit as well. So I think for us at CauseVox, it's super important just to equip folks that are fundraising for you so you can see more conversion and more donation dollars. So I really love that. One of the pieces I want to kind of take folks through real fast is the setup process of creating a page, because earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned that one of the things that's really valuable is just kind of the ease of use for your participants. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you also use the registration fee as well. So yes. A lot of organizations, when it comes to peer-to-peer, don't have a registration fee because it's a virtual event or it's not something that they're looking to take a fee for. So why don't we walk through this 4 or 5 step process here? So it looks like someone goes in, this is just one of my demo pages because sure. Registrations have ended. But I like to highlight here. So this is just a demo one, but what kind of registration tiers did you have on Jane-athon? And what did you want folks to do in order to go through this process?
Sure. So on the build out your profile page, we asked some information about, which day are you skiing? What size t-shirt do you need? What company are you with? Kind of gathering that basic information. And we thought of more questions actually as we were going through our wrap up now of like, is this your first Jane-athon? Are you even planning to ski? These sorts of things. So being able to add as many of those additional information questions was definitely really nice for us. And then when it came to registration, we charge a standard $35 registration fee. If you have a Winter Park season pass, registration is only $15. So again, having them put some skin in the game, but knowing that our costs for those people are going to be a little bit less. And then we offered free registration to anyone under 16. So when you select, a paid registration tier, a box shows up where you can enter a discount code. So every company got their own custom discount code so that they didn't have to pay that registration fee. which was really helpful for us. It makes the companies feel special. One tip I would offer to people if you are going the route of individual discount codes for each company is build out that list before you launch and send it to CauseVox as soon as you can so that those codes are ready to go as soon as you confirm those sponsorships. That was a huge time saver for us this year because then we didn't have to go back every time we got a new sponsor and say, oh, we need a code for this company. So just kind of make that comprehensive list of who all you think is going to sponsor, and then you have those codes ready to go.
Yeah. One of the things that we're enhancing the product with this year is to have self-service promo codes for peer-to-peer registration. So that will allow you for your 2023 Jane-athon to just populate it anytime, change it anytime, or if you need to make some adjustments, like let's say a corporate sponsor up their level, needing a bigger discount or something like that, then that's possible too. So that's something
awesome.
That we're investing into this process here when it comes to peer-to-peer registration to make it easier for you, Krista, in order to manage the campaign.
That's awesome. And then all of this is pretty straightforward. We didn't see a ton of people change their, their URL or their stub. We had the default fundraising goal be $175 just because that's the minimum we recommended, but we let people up it if they wanted to, just based on what they knew about their population who was going to give to their page.
And then you mentioned before too that you put in some pre-populated information, templated info. And so I'm assuming you kind of copy and pasted that stuff into this section here, which is the template of a personal page.
Yeah. So when you're building out your campaign on the back end, you can set up all of that default language, so then it's all filled in there. But you can see that they can edit it as much as they want. We had some people put pictures from previous Jane-athons. There are people who kind of ski in honor of, so they'll write the story of the person they're honoring, that sort of thing. So it's customizable if they want to, but we tried to make it so that they didn't have to do much work. And then this page is my favorite page because it's so easy for them to immediately send out all of their information. I will put the bug in your ear that we got lots of questions about Instagram this year. So if you're making adjustments, Instagram is definitely something that our audience was interested in. But clicking on any of those share buttons, we saw lots and lots of people register and then immediately share on social media and tag us in the post. So there's definitely a correlation of making those buttons easy to use and people actually going through the whole process and using them.
Yeah, I like how for you all, this process is very streamlined, where folks can pay a fee, they can get registered, they can set up your page with all these templates, and then they can go out there and promote their page so they can drive donations to their personal fundraising page. So
totally.
So I really love that aspect of it too. I think that these are some really great insights when it comes to peer-to-peer. I want to shift over to kind of one question. So what is your number one fundraising pet peeve when it comes to just digital fundraising in general, or even like peer-to-peer that you see other organizations doing?
Well, I don't like to yuck other people's yums, so I will just preface with that. But I think my biggest thing is don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Whether it comes to your levels or how you're building out your sponsorships or your participation, or even the event itself. I mean, we get a lot of committee members with a lot of great ideas, but at the end of the day, we know what works. And so I think just trying to keep it simple, unlocking what works, and then really working to refine and sharpen that edge, we've seen a lot of success with that. You don't need necessarily all the bells and whistles if your audience isn't asking for them.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because in your case for the Jane-athon, it's definitely evolved, I would assume, over 23, 24 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure when it first started out, it was super simple, maybe a few basic concepts, and then you get to see what works and what doesn't work, and then you added it onto it. While a lot of times when organizations are just starting out, when it comes to peer-to-peer or peer-to-peer events, they see inspiration, and then they want to copy the complexity of that inspiration. So it sounds like for you, the best advice is to keep things simple and then see what works and add on to it.
Totally. And if a new idea does come up, really walk through step by step, what does that entail and how much work is it going to be for our staff? Our team is very, very small. So anytime someone brings us a new idea, we say, that's great, but let's think through what the time commitment looks like and if we even have the capacity to add it in this year. We do a lot of conversations over the summer and in our off season about, feasibility. Do we have the support? Do we have the bandwidth? And is it worth it? Is it something our audience is asking for?
Right. Yeah, it definitely sounds like you're looking for an idea of if we spend time with a new concept, like, does it make sense from a return perspective? Like, is our audience going to be more engaged? Are they going to like it more? Or at the end of the day, are we going to raise more dollars? So
Exactly.
I think it's a very important discussion to have when it comes to the planning process.
Exactly.
Well, Krista, I think this is great. I wanted to end with asking you a question about how can folks learn more about Krista or learn more about Invest in Kids? I'd love to see where people can go for additional resources and questions.
Yeah, totally. So if you're interested in learning more about Invest in Kids, you can go to our website, iik.org. We just completely redesigned it, so it's super, super user-friendly, lots of information about our programs. I'm on LinkedIn. If you just look me up, I have a pretty unique name, so you should find me pretty easily there. Not really on any other social media, though, unfortunately. And then I think my email is kind of all over the place. So if anyone has specific questions, they are welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to do like a virtual coffee, talk through things, give people a tour of the back end of our site, whatever's most useful.
Sure. Yeah. And what we'll do is we'll include some of those links into the video description. So people can find you and find Invest in Kids and take inspiration from that. So I think it's really valuable. I love what you all are doing at Invest in Kids with Jane-athon. I think this peer-to-peer campaign is amazing. And it feels something that's very directly aligned with the concept, to the corporate sponsors, to the participants. So there's a really nice match when it comes to all three of those. Well, Krista, thanks so much for the time today. I think we got a lot of valuable tips, and I'm excited to see next year's peer-to-peer campaign that you all run.
Yeah, thank you. We loved using CauseVox this year. We'll be back next year for sure.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.